To me, this is a science that I'm not even interested in talking to people about not eating. I am interested in teaching people how to eat in such a way where it gets them where they want to go.
And I also learned that I probably should exercise a little more.
Alrighty then, and welcome along to the Cult of Nick. I tell you what, well excited about our guest today. Breatharianism. You ever heard of Breatharianism? Let me tell you what it is. It's the idea that you can live on energy that you don't get from food or water, but instead you get it from the world around you. You do it through a process of spiritual ascension. It's a fascinating subject. I don't know what to make of it. Let's get our advocate on, and we're going to be talking to a fascinating guy. He's called Brendan Day. He's a student of Wiley Brooks, who is no longer with us, but he was from the Breatharian Institute. And Brendan Day is, well, the main surviving student carrying on the message of Wiley Brooks from the Breatharian Institute. So let's get him on. Let's find out what Breatharianism is all about. Brandon, thanks for joining us, man. Good to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. It's a pleasure.
So Wiley Brooks, the Breatharian Institute, you got involved when, what, you were 4 years old, am I right?
Right. Well, I met Wiley when I was 4 years old. It's an interesting thing because most of us think we meet people when we come face to face with them. But at 4 years old, my family was very poor. We were lucky to have a television, and I lived deep in the country. And but when he came on television, that was a monumental event in my life. So yes, I met him in 1981 when I was 4 years old, when he came on national television and lifted nearly 10 times his body weight.
Oh, hang on a minute. So this is interesting. So already, let's just clarify. When you say you met him, what you mean is you saw him on television.
Actually, what I mean is that I met him. So when you look at what is a meeting, it's a contact of energy. You see, I've met you already. I contacted your Instagram page. We're meeting now. We're actually sharing energy right now. This is very intimate. This isn't just a digital communication. You and I are communicating from our souls right now.
Okay.
So
all right.
in that same way, Wiley, essentially, he initiated an energy within me. It was that powerful at 4 years old. So it was nothing short of a meeting.
Do you want to describe that meeting to us then? What happened?
Mm-hmm. Sure, yeah. So I don't know if did you ever watch that show?
Well, do you want to explain, tell the audience, explain to the audience what happened, yeah.
Sure. So every week they would show something that was incredible, and they would say next week on That's Incredible. And so the previous week before Wiley came on, they said next week on That's Incredible, meet the amazing Wiley Brooks. And they showed a picture of him, and I knew automatically that So I knew automatically what I called him and what I programmed into my memory was called him my older brother who came before me. Called him my older brother who came before me. Called him my older brother who came before me.
My interest has been for many years longevity, why people die. That was basically the quest I was born with. And I was also born with another strange thing compared to normal people. I didn't like to eat. I absolutely didn't like to eat. I didn't understand why people ate. I don't know where it came from, but it was the way it was.
So the week previous to him coming on television, it was a huge event in my life. It's interesting. My mom, even though it was 40 years ago now, my mom still remembers that interview where Wiley came on the television because it was just a huge event for me. So I knew that basically I was born into this world. I didn't feel related to my family. I didn't feel related to anybody until I met Wiley on television. That was the first time I actually felt like I met a relative of mine. And that's what I called him. I called him my older brother who came before me. And that's always what I considered Wiley to be.
Okay, so you met him via the television, that was the first moment you really felt connected to someone? It sounds like you hadn't really connected with your biological family. You have this awakening experience at the age of 4 when you see him on television demonstrating his incredible powers. Well, let's just context this. One of the things about Wiley Brooks, of course, is that, he was known as a breatharian.
As you become more healthy, more energy flows to the system, then you become more sensitive. So at my stage of the game, I've been doing this for years, I got to the point where my energy was so high, one, I can't live with anybody. As you can see, my nearest neighbor is several miles away. Now, I'm not here because I like to be alone. It's just that I can't live with anybody. I'm 67 years old, and I've been gazing in the sun for a long time.
Meaning that he didn't eat food, right? Do you want to explain a little bit more about that side of things as well?
Sure. Well, Wiley and Wiley's Institute, which I now run, has always defined Breatharian as one who breathes. Okay? So it's never been about, do I take in physical food? It's always been about, well, our primary energy we get from the sun and from breath, from basically the sun being plasma and our soul, our true nature being plasma. And so the plasmatic world, if you will, is a world it's a fiery world. My question to everybody who thinks that they're not a breatharian is, well, have you ever tried going one day without breathing? Or even 1 hour? So food to the Breatharian Institute is a whole, it would be like math in a normal like high school curriculum. You have different stages of math. You start with, a math 1, then maybe you move on to geometry, and then maybe you move on to trigonometry, et cetera, et cetera.
I own recording studios, and I recorded people like Led Zeppelin, Iron Butterfly, and Jimi Hendrix are some of my clients. Around the time I was working with Jimi Hendrix in New York is really the time I got really inspired, because when he passed away, as many of my clients did, I just became obsessed with the idea of finding out why we die. And so as I looked around, I noticed most of the people that actually had any knowledge about this type of thing always fasted. So I decided to try fasting to see what would happen. And sure enough, the first fast I did, which was about 10 days, I ended up having 10 times more energy.
So it's not about, did Wiley eat or do I eat food? It's about why and what is that food doing to the body. So Wiley ate, but Wiley ate for different reasons. See, Wiley said that he reached this state called samadhi before he lifted the weights, before he lifted 10 times his body weight. He reached a position of what they call enlightenment or samadhi.
I happened to be living at the time on Muscle Beach in California, where the bodybuilders work out, and I decided one day to go out and see if I could lift any weight. So I went out to the weightlifting pin, and I started putting on the weights, and the first time I was out, I noticed as I put the plates on, the weights got lighter. So the very first time I walked into the weightlifting pin, I ended up with 800 pounds on the bar.
And from this place, Wiley didn't eat anything or drink anything or do anything for almost a month. He was in Colorado at the time. And he said that during that time that everything was perfect, that he couldn't do, there was just nothing to do. There was nothing to change, just everything was absolutely perfect. But from that position, he remembered that the world that he was raised in had problems. So he chose to come away from this enlightened position and enter back into the world to see if he could help solve some of the world's problems. So from that point on, Wiley more ate to stay in his body than, to do anything else. He was never really getting nutrition from food. And that's really what Wiley was always saying, is that food is a stimulant. It's going to stimulate your body in one direction or the other. So make sure you know what you're eating if your body is going to become what you've eaten.
Right. Okay, so let me just check that I'm following you here. So what happened is Wiley Brooks reached a point of enlightenment which meant that he could effectively sort of drift away from the cares of this world, but he chose to eat food so that he could stay on planet Earth and help fix the problems that we see all around us.
Correct. That's his story.
Gotcha.
Yep.
At the time, we had Arnold Schwarzenegger, Mr. T, a lot of the other, professional bodybuilders, and to them, I was sort of like a joke because I'm a little skinny guy lifting all that weight. But when I started lifting 1,100 pounds of weight, I started to get a little attention.
And then, so you witness him on television when you're 4, and he's eaten nothing, and then he lifts 10 times his own body weight. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
And then that makes a huge impact on you. And then when did you meet him in the physical realm? So you meet him at the age of 4, what, couple of months, few years, what was it?
Yeah, so, well, let me say first off that I wasn't aware when I met him through the weights. That was before the Tom Snyder interview. And I wasn't aware that he was into the breatharian thing. I knew that for me, my parents had to force feed me every day. Most of my life was spent at the table because my parents just made me sit there from breakfast to lunch to dinner so many times because I couldn't eat the food in this world. It was what they were offering me, my parents were offering me. I did not perceive it as food. I perceived it as poison. So I refused it as much as I could. Mm-hmm. So that was at 4 years old. Now, I didn't meet Wiley again until 2005. So I would have been, almost 30 years old at that point. And that was when I connected with him again. I found his website, the Breatharian.com website.
Before I fasted, I couldn't lift probably 50 pounds. I never even tried to. So then I had a whole new direction to look in because now I needed to find out why it is I eat less, and suddenly, without any other disciplines, I'm 10 times stronger. We eat because we don't have enough energy.
And I called him and I immediately told him my story. I was like, I remember you from, 1981, and meeting you was the biggest event of my life. And first off, he was like, you remember me from that? How old were you? I was like, I was 4 years old. And he, couldn't believe that I could retain a memory like that, but I certainly did. So it was some years later when I was introduced to his work. And honestly, I was not interested in what's called Breatharianism at all. It was by a stroke of luck that I even found him because I don't really consider not eating to be something I want to do in this world. I'm not interested in how long can I fast, and and a lot of breatharian people are really into that kind of thing. I've never really been into not eating. I've just been into what is a food that feels like a good food to me. So I've mostly gravitated toward organic foods and things like that. So Wiley really had a different mechanism in his body than what I had in my body as far as the food goes.
But what happens when you're in the sun, which is a natural energy for all living things, right? When you have enough sun, then the energy in the body rises to the point where you don't have an appetite, so there's no need to eat. That doesn't mean I have not been eating for 30 years. My purpose for eating is to lower my frequencies, not to increase it. It's almost like for me, it's necessary to not be too healthy because otherwise I wouldn't be able to go out and be anywhere.
Right.
So by the time I met Wiley again in 2005, I'd already been strictly on all organic foods and these kind of things, just very clean foods since about 1999.
Right.
But I've always, been kind of trim and stuff like that. I never really wanted to bulk up from food or get really big from food. But the fasting thing never really was appealing to me until I met Wiley.
I might want to put a little more, maybe. We want to use the smaller 45.
Well, we're going to put a whole bunch on there.
You put more weight. But you want to put, I don't know, about 1,000. No. You kidding?
We'll see what
Let's see what we can do. If I can lift the bar, I'll be happy. And I did lift the bar.
Right, okay, because on the website, breatharian.com, there's a section about breatharians, and it starts off in quite a bold fashion. And it says, question, if you are a true breatharian, why did you recommend a diet of Diet Coke, a McDonald's quarter pounder with cheese meal? And it's a question addressed to Wiley. And he says, in order to understand why I've chosen these foods, you must first know how the human bodies descend into the third dimensional world in the first place. This is not our natural home. Being here as long as we have has not been intentional. And he then goes on to explain what forms of McDonald's you can eat and how it helps your ascension through the different worlds. Right. Quite surprising to me to hear that you're going for more traditionally healthy foods, organic food, that kind of stuff. Whereas there's McDonald's as part of the Breatharian Institute, I guess, part of the process to get you into ascension. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so first off, by the time I had met Wiley again in 2005, I had lived on a commune. Our slogan on this commune, it was called Zendik Farm, Zendik Farm, and it was a group of artists we lived together. Our slogan was "Stop bitching, start a revolution." I was very, what you would say, anti corporations at that point, or like I was anti a lot of things at that point. Anti-government. I was anti just kind of everything. And certainly I was anti-McDonald's and anti-Coca-Cola when Wiley and I met. Yeah. I had no interest in eating a burger from McDonald's. And I had even less interest in drinking Coke or Diet Coke for that matter.
But to make this clear for people listening and just looking at the website at the moment, it says, do you know the base frequency of the double quarter pounder with cheese meal from McDonald's and Diet Coke? So do you want to explain that, the base frequency of foods? What are we talking about here, and why is it that for a period at least the double quarter pounder with cheese meal from McDonald's hit that base frequency there?
Right. So by the base frequency, what he's talking about is like at the bottom. There might be other frequencies that are on top of something's essential energy, but at the beginning of every creation is what you would call a base frequency. Yeah. It means that it's kind of the lowest common denominator in that of that energy. So if you removed everything else, at the bottom is this energy. And so, the base frequency, meaning the resonant energy of that particular burger.
How many hours do you sleep a week, Wiley?
Well, I normally sleep 1 to 7 hours a week. Now, that means some nights I sleep 1 hour, some nights I sleep a little more.
What do you do with all that time?
Well, that's the thing. I hate to admit it, but I get a little bored once in a while. I know you're not supposed to if you're spiritual enhanced.
I've actually had other dowsers check the energy of the burger, and normally they have to move their scale above what it is that they normally check normal food with, because it's such a high energy food. And I don't know a better way to describe to you what the base frequency is that you, in your beginning, Nick, when you were born into this world, your base frequency was that which remains to you to this day, how you were born, your original self.
The essence, maybe, the essence of it, yeah.
Yes, the essence. And that's really what Wiley means by the base frequency, is can anyone tell without judgment what the base frequency of those items are? And the problem, it's interesting that you're asking this question, because as students, this is the thing that people call me the most on. Why this diet?
Yeah, some people claim it's because Wiley got caught eating fast food and that this was a sort of an after the fact thought.
Well, let me tell you, is this an adult audience that we're talking to?
Yes, sir. Definitely, yeah.
Okay, well, let me tell you something about Wiley. Anybody who says that they caught Wiley doing anything, they have no idea who Wiley is, okay? Wiley was never caught doing anything. I mean, first off, he was making $10,000 a day when he so-called got caught eating Twinkies or whatever, right? He could have easily hired somebody to go to 7-Eleven and grab his whatever he wanted to eat.
Fasting is basically a belief system. I mean, whether one eats or not is a belief system without a doubt. I discovered that is the belief system that controls our lives. For example, ask anybody, what do you think would happen if you don't have any food? Right off the bat, they say, I will die.
He never hid from anybody. And I tell people this story who are close to us, and I guess I'll tell your audience, hopefully you guys think this is funny. But Wiley visited me in Charleston, South Carolina one time. And Wiley, he asked me, where's the porn store? I was like, the porn store? The adult video store? And he says, yeah, I want you to bring me there because I need to check some things. And I was like, I'm not bringing you to the porn store. I'm not going to a porn store. And he said, the hell you're not. You're coming with me, and we're going to go in the front door, and we're going to come out of the front door. And that was the beginning of Wiley really teaching me to just never be ashamed of anything. No matter what I do it in front of God and all of creation anyway, no matter what it is. So never be ashamed. Wiley never hid anything. He that day he made me take him to this porn store, and it was really interesting because Wiley at that point he hadn't had an erection in over 20 years. It's not why he used pornography. He used it to actually anchor higher dimensional energies in the bodies of the girls, so that the girls could carry a higher dimensional energy to the rest of the porn industry. It was fascinating because he said, this is a big business, and this is one of the biggest businesses in the world, so I'm going to use it for the good of the world.
He took you to buy pornography.
Yeah,
and then
Hustler. I think it was a Hustler magazine or something.
Right, and then he would meditate on these magazines and send positive vibes to the industry?
Exactly. He would use this pendulum, and he would focus on the energy of the girls, and he would basically inoculate their bodies with higher dimensional energy that then they could pass around the industry. And he said that, one day that those seeds that he planted would, change the world.
Wow. So he's planting seeds over the bodies of porn stars in magazines. And also he's preaching a gospel where you can ascend via Diet Coke and McDonald's. I think he's one of the most fascinating. I'm going to call him a guru. Is that the right word? Is he a guru, do you think?
Well, it's funny that you say that, because at the last time that I was physically with Wiley, he insisted that I call him guru. And I was like, Wiley, I never asked for a guru. I'm never going to call you guru. But in the end, that's what I call him. So he got the last laugh on me on that one, because essentially that's the title for what it is that he brought to the table.
It sounds like what he was. So have you taken on board all of his spiritual practices? Did you take on the porn practice there?
Well, I consider that job to be more or less done.
But I never warm up, I never exercise, so I should just warm up a tiny bit.
You want to go walk the treadmill a little bit?
Wiley did things like Wiley would spend months on things that I still have no idea what he was doing. Like, do you know about Egyptian mythology? Wiley spent months and months straightening out what he called the problems that came from the Egyptian times being manipulated. So he spent months and months. Every time I would talk to him, he would say, I'm still working on the Eye of Isis thing. So apparently, according to what position he was coming from, there was some kind of problem with a relic or a artifact called the Eye of Isis. So he spent months straightening out the Eye of Isis, and then he moved on to the Eye of Horus, and he spent months straightening out the Eye of Horus. And, then he would go around to all the statues of liberty in the world and do different energetic things with them. And then he went to all of the arches in the world, and he straightened out the energies within these arches. So Wiley was always doing things that were kind of advanced to what I do. What I do is I consider the most valuable thing that Wiley left me was the divining practice. Because essentially, if I was going to go copying what Wiley did, it would never do me or anybody else any good. Because Wiley was doing his job, whatever that was. But I don't think that I need to do what Wiley was doing that way, because I just feel no desire to do it. So while I do bring forward some things within the lineage of what Wiley did, as far as eating the burgers, divining things, these kind of things I do. But those kind of things, the Eye of Isis stuff, the Eye of Horus stuff, the putting the energies in the actresses, that's not really anything that I'm interested in doing. I feel no drive to do it, so I don't think it's my job.
Yeah, fair enough. Probably something that's been sorted by now. So let's have a think. So what's happened is you've come along and you've met this guy, and this is in 2000. Did you say 2005? You met him, and at that point you realise you've already met him when you were 4. So you're kind of keen, right, to hang out with him, I guess. And then what was it that really? I mean, you sound like you were sold when you were 4, man. I was going to ask you, what was it that drew you in? What was it that made you think, this is the hill for me? This is what's happening. Talk us a little bit through those moments, because I'm wondering at what point you go from, normal person to student to adept.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, of course, at 4 years old, there was just no doubt in me of who he was.
Yeah.
That was a no-brainer. He was literally the first person that I met that I felt related to. And thankfully I was raised in an area. You're from England. Do you know what the South is, what they call the South in the United States?
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah. Do you set a bit of the scene if you want?
Well, it's generally a very racist area. But thankfully my parents, they were adamantly, against, racism and stuff. So they never made me feel weird about, my connection with Wiley, because he was obviously, very dark-skinned and I'm very light-skinned.
Yeah, we haven't clarified this, have we? Sorry. So Brandon, you're a white guy. Wiley Brooks was a black guy, and it hadn't occurred to me that would have caused a problem. But yeah, I get where you're coming from now. Yeah, okay, I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in that area, it would have caused problems, but in my house, thankfully, it was not a problem. So when I met Wiley as an adult, I'd already gone through certain things. I don't think it's important to really get into details here, but I'd already gone on a long vision quest, about a year-long vision quest when I was 19 years old. And I'd done different things that prepared me for really meeting and coming together with Wiley. For one thing, I had been into organic foods long enough to see that there were some kind of problems with the foods. I noticed that they just didn't act. There were a lot of natural foods and organic foods that just did not treat my body good when I ate them. So there was already something in me that was a little skeptical of the organic industry. Anyhow, so it wasn't a huge stretch for me to just go out and eat the first burger. I did it a bit as a novelty, but I was already extremely into meditation. Now, the thing that surprised me the most about the burger was what it did when I ate it inside of my body, how it worked with those 5 names that Wiley gave us. And so
I tell you what, I'm going to stop you there a second, because what I want you to do is talk us through this process a bit more, because I think I understand what's happening here. You're talking about a process you go through that enables spiritual ascension that is quite complicated, and the burger aspect, eating a McDonald's hamburger is only actually a tiny part of it, really. So let's give people a bit more of an understanding of what you're talking about. You're going now into spiritual ascension.
I lifted 500 pounds of weight to demonstrate that the lifting of the weight basically has to do with the amount of energy that flows through the system. At my age, even I can still lift, at least 500 or 600 pounds. So that was the demonstration.
Set the scene a little bit more.
Sure. So the words or the names, first off, these are, to make the audience aware of them, there are 5 names or 5 words that Wiley chose to give to the world. These words are generally connected to a physical guru, out of India. And there's a couple of gurus who use these words, but essentially what Wiley said was that he was given those words so that he could give them to the world. He said that it was time for those words to come outside of India and come to the whole world. So those words are Jyotnaranjan, Onkar, Arankar, Soham, Satnam.
So give us those again. Let's see if I can pronounce them as well.
Sure. So it's Jyotnaranjan,
Onkar,
Rarankar.
Oh, what's that one? Arankar. Rarankar. Right, okay, Rarankar.
Yeah, that's it. Sohan.
Satnam. Right, okay.
Yeah, that's pretty close. Wiley has them spelled out on the website, and the thing is that the meditation, what that meditation is meant to do is dissolve karma. Karma just being the accumulation of stuff in your system. So that's how I don't like to look at karma as good or bad. I just like to look at it as accumulation. And so those words, I began really using the words and saying the words, and I noticed that they really lightened my body and they made me feel good. And so I said, okay, well, I'm just going to try this burger.
Well, hang on, let me just check. So when you're using these words, sorry to interrupt, but I just need to get clear on what's happening here.
Yeah, thank you.
So you're doing these words. Is it that you're meditating and using these words, or are you just saying them generally in life? How is that when you say you use them?
Yes. So I'm meditating, and so when I say using them, really I mean creating them. So I'm creating those words as individuals within my mind. So basically, my one thought is Jyotnaranjan, and then my one thought is Onkar. And as I'm thinking that one thought, I'm actually creating what looks inside of my mind like a third-dimensional kind of hologram of the word. And so I'm creating the image of the word spelled out in my mind, and I'm creating the sound of the word also. So I'm really engaged in the creation of the words. Now, that started in meditation for me when I was just being still, just meditating. But eventually I learned how to meditate all day long, working, doing whatever it is that I'm doing to continue the meditation.
Okay, so you get to that point, and then it's time for kind of the sacred sacrament, the McDonald's burger there.
Yes.
And did you have that pre-prepared? So you're doing your meditation, or then was actually going into the restaurant, was that part of the ritual?
Well, it took me a while to go in to a McDonald's. I did the drive-through in the beginning. And the point, what Wiley, how his instruction was to meditate for a couple of hours before going to McDonald's. So that's what I did. I meditated for a couple of hours before, and then I grabbed the burger and the Coke, and I had the meal. And my experience was like it wrapped up all of this old stuff in my body and wrapped it up in a nice little package for it to be shipped out of my body. It was the strangest experience. I completely did not expect it. And that's the problem really with Wiley's diet, is it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't add up to any of us.
I'm scratching my head a bit here, but I'm fascinated.
Yeah.
So let's just walk through this again, and then I'm just going to check a couple of details, because it's an odd testimony. So you go along, you do your meditation, you do your 5 words, you're building these images in your mind, 3-dimensional images that are associated with the sound of the word, the way it's spelt on that, and meditating about. And then you go along, you go into McDonald's. No, you go through the drive-through there. You sit in your car, you eat the burger. And then this process of cleansing, does that, without being crude about it, come before or after the burger has been through your digestive system? Because for me, McDonald's tend to go through pretty quickly.
Right.
Is that when the karma was released?
No, it started immediately. As soon as I began to eat, I became lighter. And in fact, I want to say it was the first or second time that I ate a burger. I went back and got another one, and I ate a second double quarter pounder with cheese, and I still felt emptier than when I began eating. It was this, and I'm not the only person who says this. You know, this is a common theme for people who do the meditation and then eat the burger.
Oh
They
yeah,
actually
sure. Let me
when they're done.
Let me just explain to the audience here. There's a website that you guys are attached to. There's more than a few of you. This is not something that's just like you and your mate Wiley. There's a few people who've got into this. I'm okay. So, all right. So what do you think's going on there? I mean, do you want to explain it to us? You're ascending.
Sure.
What is it that's going on there?
All right. Well, I'm going to tell you from my perspective, if you don't mind. Because I can't really say it. I could tell you what Wiley said about it, if you'd rather hear that.
Give us both barrels, man. Tell us whatever you want to tell us.
So Wiley said that the burger actually has a soul, and that basically that one burger has one soul, and that burger is the soul of the burger. Has a job in this world, just like all of us as souls have a job in this world. So one of the things that Wiley did to the burger was that every time that he ate the burger, from the very first time, you see, Wiley did not expect to find this burger as being the one thing that he could eat. It's something that he found when he was traveling and he couldn't find anything to eat. And so from Wiley's perspective, the very beginning of his process, he put in one little brick of energy into the soul of the burger. And then every time he would eat the burger, he would put basically another brick inside of the burger to sort of build the foundation for ascension for humanity. So as Wiley continued to eat these burgers throughout his life, every time he would eat it, he would anchor in his energy to the burger. So basically, to make his body, essentially what you would call the body of the guru or the God body, to make the energy of that body available to anybody who ate the burger. So Wiley used the burger as a way of anchoring, much like the girls in the pornography. He used the burger to anchor higher dimensional energies into. Then when we take in those energies, our bodies are given fuel from the world above us.
Right, I see. So it built, each time he ate a burger, it became more of a sacred act for anyone else who did it.
Correct.
Gotcha.
If they're using it in the same vein, of using the words, the meditation along with the burger. The Diet Coke is very special as well. What Wiley showed me about the Diet Coke is it displaces sugars out of the body, and that essentially sugars were the beginning of the fall of humanity, was the eating of the sugars.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, which is, in the Bible they call it the apple.
But in fact, yeah, so the fruit. Oh, all right. So this is an interesting area. So the beginning, so eating the fruit in the Bible, that's actually the beginning of humans eating sugar, and that's where things start basically to go south.
Correct. Yes.
All right.
And so this is all what Wiley says. I want to be real, distinct about that, because I don't like personally talking about anything that I haven't made sense of myself.
Yeah, because there are sugars in McDonald's, aren't there? For example, in the sauces
There are.
and stuff. Yeah,
The potatoes, even the buns on the burger.
but maybe that's, don't know, balances it out or something. I mean, so this is interesting. So then, what do you think's happening? So that's Wiley's perspective.
Right.
What about you, the student? What do you think's going on?
Yeah. So I've had these visions throughout my life. But actually, it's a family thing. My aunt, she's like my mother. She had these visions. She had visions as a child, and she would live to be, an old woman and was surrounded by all these children. Well, she got this very rare disease ages ago, and she's by far the oldest living person who's got this rare form of MS, because she had these visions when she was a child. And I've had the same thing. I've had these visions that have come true. I had these cow beings who came to me. And they came to me, and they basically, these cows are what they call the Hathors in Egyptian mythology, and they're very sacred. And they came to me and they told me that they very much approve of the McDonald's diet, of McDonald's in general, which I was shocked about, because again, I did not approve of McDonald's. But if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. Well, I never planned to eat McDonald's in my life. So my perspective on the burger is that it's very in harmony with the energy of the cows. And the cows are this very sacred emotional energy. Like, I don't know if you know this or not, but if you have a cow and you're crying, and your cow's out in the barn, your cow will cry for you, because they're very highly developed emotionally. And when you look in mythology, cows are considered to be mothers of Egypt and India. They're considered to be the mothers of everyone. In India, it's serious. Like, you don't even give the milk from your cow to your neighbor, because that's your mother,
So this is quite a lot to take on board. So the cow people, did you talked to them in a dream, right? You didn't talk to them in
right? Correct. Yeah, they came to me in a dream.
Okay, and then the cow people, did they? This is going to sound silly. I'm going to ask it anyway because you've mentioned it. Did they have any opinions on McDonald's recent change to farming policies and stuff? Were they bothered about that kind of stuff, do you think, or was it ever thus that McDonald's has had a kind of an ascension spirit about it? Do you see what I mean? They've made changes. I'm with you, man, right? I'm of the generation that thought that McDonald's was just the embodiment of pure evil, but maybe it's changed. I don't know. And the cow people seem quite happy with it. So is that the case, do you think? Did they give any hints as to how McDonald's are doing with its farming methods?
Well, Wiley said that the Ray Kroc guy was part of his spiritual team in the beginning.
Who's that? The Ray Kroc guy?
Ray Kroc, I think that's his name, Crofter. Yeah, he was the founder of McDonald's.
Right.
So again, the base frequency of McDonald's is one that's in harmony with the upper worlds, because that's where their founder came from. So in a way, it's like, well, McDonald's has strayed. They've done all kinds of bad things, but in the beginning was this clean energy, and that's remained in the company throughout time. And ironically, McDonald's is the only fast food restaurant in America that's refused to use genetically modified potatoes. They also don't have, out where I am, they don't freeze the beef, it's all fresh.
Have they thought about sponsoring you guys?
We've never approached them. Interestingly, so I'm driven in a lot of different ways than just the Breatharian Institute, you would say, as far as an educational facility. Like, I'm I've been driven my whole life to make this world a better place. You know, that's my primary goal, is to end suffering in the world. This Breatharian Institute is just part of my life's mission.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've begun to really do is bring the Breatharian Institute into a position of making money and of becoming popular and these kind of things, because basically that's going to take some real money and putting it out there. So it's interesting that you're calling me for this interview, and I have 2 other interviews this week. I haven't actually decided to go public really yet, because for me, I'm securing everything on our end to just do this thing as a business and take a large business loan and go about, getting us cameras and getting us advertising and new computers and everything like that to really be professional about this. So I really wasn't ready. The Institute isn't really ready to become popular like that yet, but we're so close. It's basically going to happen before the new year that I release the credit line. Because it's not just McDonald's. And that's the thing that, and I'll give you this little piece and then I'll stop. But Wiley, this divining method that he taught me, I consider to be way more important than anything else. Because the McDonald's diet, what happens when they close McDonald's down? They just closed them down over there for how long? It was like 6 months McDonald's were closed down in the UK almost.
Yeah,
and
because there's a broader aspect to this, I think. From what I've learned about the Breatharian Institute, one of the broader aspects to this is in fact to do with the colour, yellow. Am I right about that? I'm under the impression that yellow foods make a significant difference to your ascension capabilities.
They do, yes. So Wiley didn't have a veil in the same way that other people have veil.
A veil? What do you mean?
A veil, meaning that he could see the spiritual world. His family knew this about him. Wiley was making hand over fist money at 9 years old, fixing people's televisions because he could see the inside workings of electrical units and things. And in the same way, he saw our bodies as needing the yellow energy. So the yellow diet is really about building that 3rd chakra power center in the solar plexus. So yeah, it is very important. Lemons, salt. I don't eat primarily yellow foods, but I always do keep them in my diet. Wiley found that by being able to see the energetic body of most people, and he just decided from being able to see our bodies that our 3rd chakra is the one that's depleted the most. That's what the yellow diet is all about.
Gotcha. So let's fan out a little further then. This divining method that you've mentioned. Do you want to explain a little bit about that? And then I also want to ask you about staring at the sun, since we're on the subject of yellow things. So in whichever order you like, sir. Let's hear.
I started by finding water. My dad handed me a stick when I was a young child, and he just said, go out in the yard and find water. By the time I met Wiley, I had moved on to pendulum dowsing, is what it's known as. And but I was having basically what people consider to be great success. I was around 98% accurate in finding information using this method. But to me, that was a huge problem, because if you're only 98% accurate, that means what is up with that 2%? If this is a science where 2 + 2 = 4, right? 2 + 2 has got to equal 4 all the time for me to be able to use that as a reference point. Right. What if 2 + 2 only equaled 4 98% of the time? So that really set me out to try and find out why is dowsing, how did it move from being a science into being a pseudoscience? I met Wiley, and he really taught me, why aren't we getting 100% accurate results? What is a pure science? And so that's Wiley's method of divining, which I call the quantum divining technique. It is a specific technique, and I have taught it on the international level 2 years in a row. I was going to teach this past year again, but the convention closed because of the COVID.
Yeah.
It's 100% accurate divining method. And it does that by using reference points, which is what the other divining sciences don't use. So in other words, when you go up to a food right? And you're saying, is this food good for me? Normally people would get a yes or a no from that. Well, Wiley's technique is more to approach the food or approach, let's say the apple, and then to check that apple and see if it's in harmony with your higher self, with your sacred heart, with these different aspects of you. So then I'm not saying, well, what's good for me? Because who the hell is this me that's talking? If I'm saying it's something good for me, who is me? Who am I? Is this the ego talking? Is it the inner child talking? Is it the higher self talking? Who is this I? So that's how we really approach divining, from the perspective of being able to use reference points so that we get accurate results. And ironically, I use the same pendulum technique to find water for people too.
That seems strange to me. I would have thought divining was not something that would be 100%. I mean, I would have assumed there was a little bit of leeway here and there because of the nature of it. I'm quite surprised. So if you've got a 100% success rate with divining, why would it be that's going to fall down if you say, I don't know, rocked up at Massachusetts Institute of Technology and said, look, I found out how to do divining? There's a disconnect there, isn't there? At some point that's not going to work, right? That transaction. Why would that be, do you think?
Well, I think that, for one, science is based on what we know at this point, unless we're talking about quantum science. Quantum science is, I think, going to be where divining will eventually come in, because they'll see that we're just much faster scientists than they are. Physical scientists, they just seem to be much more interested in what they know rather than what they don't know. It's an interesting thing about science, because we're always finding 10 years ago we didn't know anything. 5 years ago we didn't know anything. But somehow today there's this mechanism built in to where they know. They never admit we're wrong today. They'll only admit we were wrong yesterday, but today we're sure we've got it right. And so that mechanism of needing to kind of be on top intellectually has caused science to come into a great stagnation, in my opinion. I think that's the problem. Because the thing is that what I've noticed as a scientist is that I can get answers to an experiment before even conducting the experiment. Because time isn't really something that exists. So I should be able to check the energy of something before it's created to see if that's in fact what I want to create as a creator. So I think that there are fringe sciences who are more open to this kind of thought, but mostly, like normal universities, they wouldn't be interested. But maybe in the future we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, there have been attempts to prove Breatharianism in the past that have sort of fallen down, haven't quite worked. I don't know. I wonder if it's the same thing.
Well, there's the one Indian guy. I could send you his link later on. But there have been people who have passed the test. There have been a lot of people who have failed the test. To me, I would never want to do that test because I've already conducted my own experiments. So, for instance, when I travel and I find on a map by divining where is a place for me to go that's in harmony with my higher self in this physical world, then I take off in my car and I go out into the woods and I go to these places. Well, what I found is that as long as I'm not around people, I don't eat, period. I have no desire to eat if I'm not around other people who have food in their bodies. So to me, I wouldn't want to be in a building, locked into a building, trying to conduct an experiment when there's people around me with food in their belly. Because essentially their body's talking to my body, and now we're trying to, my body has a decision of, do I want to be in harmony with these people, or do I want to be in harmony with where, this soul is taking me? And I can't see any reason why I would put my soul in a scientific facility to be tested.
Yeah, this is going to be something.
This
is going to be tied into the mechanics of how this is supposed to work, isn't it? So if I'm breatharian and I've not eaten, and then I hang out with you, and maybe you've just been munching on the McDonald's there, I might think to myself, right, I feel a bit hungry now, because I would tune into your sort of headspace. So I guess this is one of the things about breatharianism that's a bit of a concern when you're covering it on a podcast. It sounds to me like this is the sort of thing you can only really test when you're on your own and you're away from the possibility of getting help, because obviously people who don't eat do tend to die, don't they? They tend not to get through the other side on that one.
Yeah, I really don't know personally. I've never known anybody who's died from not eating myself, but I have heard that it's happened. But I do know that they have like fasting facilities and things. I think it's big in Russia, from what I've heard.
Because it's not the sort of thing that we would recommend anyone try, is it? Just not eating food. I mean,
I never recommend people to fast, ever.
Right.
And this is the funny thing, because I get more people just being mean online around something I've never in my life suggested to anybody. I mean, the most hardcore I've ever suggested to anybody is like, you may want to try fasting for a day or two, or even just skipping a meal and see how it works for you. Like, that's about as extreme as I get. Because I don't think that not eating food is the point. For me, it's a science of what is food. So food to my body acts as a stimulant. A stimulant. It's going to stimulate my body in one direction or the other. So then it's important to me to know, well, what is a food? So how I define food is a medicine. It acts in my body when I eat it like a medicine. Now, there could be one apple sitting here, and that apple's either going to be a food or a poison in my body. So then, to me, the point becomes checking to see if my body believes that this is a food or medicine, or if it's a poison. So that, to me, is the bigger point. The bigger point for me is to get to a point where I can go to a grocery store anywhere, travel anywhere, go anywhere, do anything I want, and I'm free as a creator to decide what it is that I'm going to put in my body, because my body's like a replication unit. So that's, to me, the bigger deal. Do I want to replicate food? Do I want to replicate peace, joy, or do I want to replicate pain and fear and these kind of things that are found chemically in foods? You see, this is the thing that keeps me away from normal foods, is the pain and the fear that I feel through the foods. Mm-hmm.
So I wonder, when it comes to staring at the sun, again, an activity where you've got to be, I mean, obviously you can blind yourself doing that, for anyone who doesn't realize that.
Right, and people have, and they've called me for advice after blinding themselves.
Right, so people have stared at the sun, blinded themselves, and then contacted you to get advice about that. And why would they do that, though? I mean, first of all, let's just make clear, first of all, on this podcast, I'm recommending nobody stares at the sun. It's a pretty clear way of blinding yourself.
Yeah.
But it's something I found on your website, actually, that you can get energy by doing it. It seemed a bit odd to me. Do you want to explain a little bit, and we can
Sure.
what's happening?
So, well, first off, I'll say that a new branch of science is called plasma science. Have you heard of plasma science?
No. In fact, I wondered when you mentioned it right at the start of our conversation, how many people would actually know what plasma is. It's not a gas and it's not a solid, right? It's its own separate state. Is that right?
Correct. Yes, it is. And our sun is plasma. Fire is plasma. So much that we take for granted is plasma.
Right.
Yeah. So in plasma science, which mostly is only around space travel, are they considering plasma science? It's there's some type of plasma mechanisms in these quantum computers. So it's only really advanced sciences or nuclear science are into the plasma state at this point. But one of the primary principles in plasma science is that the stronger plasma body feeds the weaker plasma body. So in our solar system, you would consider to be the Earth to be like the weaker plasma body and the sun to be the stronger, because the sun feeds the Earth and not vice versa.
Right.
Right. And essentially, our bodies being like the earth it's the very same principle that the sun actually feeds us. As a plasmatic entity, it feeds us because we are actually plasmatic entities. And that's the position of the Breatharian Institute, anyhow, is that we are not our bodies. Our bodies are more like a vehicle or a coat, for us. So in plasma science, the stronger body feeds the weaker. So therefore, if we, gaze, at the sun, not stare, but a stare is like a hard gaze. A gaze is like a soft stare, if you will. But it's very different. One has relaxed eyes and you're not actually staring at the sun. You're gazing in its direction. And,
I'm pretty sure you can still injure your eyes gazing at the sun there, though, man. I think. I'm
sure you can. Well, the thing that most people recommend, and I don't, I recommend people go super minimalist with this, but they say like the first 10 to 15 minutes in the morning and the last 10 to 15 minutes in the evening is when the sun's at a certain angle. To where most of the harmful rays are refracted or reflected before they hit your eyes. So that is what I do. I've personally never had any problems from sun gazing. I've never experienced any blindness, but I can tell you it's definitely possible because people call me all the time saying, I still can't see. It's been weeks. I'm like, well, that's terrible. Who in the world, told you to do this?
So wait, what were they expecting to? This is what I don't get, man. Right? So you're looking at the sun, which I really don't think anyone should do because it's got such a proven track record of causing people to go blind. Right. But then again, if you go onto your website, it does explain how you can gaze at the sun, which again I don't recommend you do either. What are you supposed to get in return? I mean, if you escape with your sight, what do you get? What do you gain?
Yeah, you would have to really try it, but you would be fed. I mean, have you ever been to the beach?
I've been to the beach. Yep.
Like in the summertime.
Yep.
Okay, so how there's a different part of you that gets fed from all of that sun. Are you aware of that?
I know about getting vitamin D.
Yeah, and the way that it makes you feel different is what I'm saying. Like, I know that science says it's, vitamin D and this and that, but have you noticed there's a different charge that comes to your body just from being in the sun?
Right.
Yeah, and essentially that's what it is. But our eyeballs, our eyes, they say, the eyes, it's the only part of the brain that we can see. So it's actually letting that light into the central nervous system is really what the sun gazing does physically to charge us. I don't want to sound like I'm advocating for sun gazing though, because actually if I was going to tend to one end or the other, I would be completely on your side of don't even try it. Because I'm just very careful in life. But
it ties in. Sorry to interrupt, but it ties in, doesn't it? Because as I understand it, the principle of breatharianism is that you're absorbing kind of the energy of the life force, chi, the energy of God. You're absorbing that through your spiritual practice, and that's not unrelated to this business that we're talking about at the moment. And the intent, as I understand it, would be to reach such a point of enlightenment that, you don't need to eat, you have that energy all the time, and what every day feels like you've been on a sunny beach.
Well, I think that's what draws a lot of people to doing things that are so dangerous like this, is that Wiley was very adamant about this, and it was very true to me that I am not from this world. So essentially, like a lot of people, it's not just me. It wasn't just Wiley. This is a lot of people who follow the Breatharian Institute and come to us for information. don't feel at home in the third dimensional world. So the problem then becomes that people become desperate to get out once they accept that there is another place that they are from that is home. And I think that's why people do these extreme things like sun gazing all day long. They are trying to ascend like tomorrow at the latest, preferably today. You know, this is what people are trying to do. So they're pushing things very, very fast and doing things like that are dangerous, like these kinds of sun gazing, like different types of, people do all kinds of things.
Sun gazing or potentially starving yourself if you do it wrong. Yeah, that kind of stuff. So, okay, so I wonder if I just move you kind of final question here as we're wrapping. I mean, this has been a fascinating conversation. I don't know what to make of you, but I think this is an absolutely fascinating conversation. And I don't know, the world's a strange place. But there's been attempts, as we mentioned before, to prove that breatharianism is a thing, that you don't need food, to prove these ideas. You know, there's been attempts online, there's been attempts on television and so on. And I wonder, do you believe that some of these ideas are deliberately and actively suppressed, or do you think it's just a matter of time until everyone's going to accept the reality of what you've been talking to us about here?
Yeah, well, I do think that it's actively oppressed, and I do think that that there are certain people within the metaphysical industry, if you will, that is they are propped up because they're going to fall soon. So I think that the people who aren't legitimate are the ones who are given the loudest voices. I'm not, saying that they've been keeping me from success or anything like that, but I have noticed that people who seemingly have the least experience and things to say get the loudest forum. So
but I mean, let's put it in crude terms. You know, if it was the case that you didn't need to eat, then that would be problematic for the economy, for example. You know, it would fundamentally change society if this information were to be widely accepted.
Well, I think it's really important that Wiley, being the person who was the first one to bring the idea of breatharianism to the world, he defined it in the beginning. He told Tom Snyder that he was a breatharian. He told the web drifter dude that he was a breatharian. You're a breatharian. Everyone who breathes is a breatharian. And so I think that there's a lot lost in the whole thing of, well, do we need to eat? And to me, it's a simple thing. When you die, what happens to you? And this is the thing for me as, a medium. I get information from people. As a medium, I get information from, animals. I'm an animal communicator. I can remove curses. All of these kind of things have to do with who are we really. So if I don't die when the body dies, then what does the me that doesn't die live on? And if I don't die when the body dies, it proves that the body is recessive and my spirit body is the dominant body. So to me, this is a science that I'm not even interested in talking to people about not eating. I am interested in teaching people how to eat in such a way where it gets them where they want to go. Because eating to me should definitely be a science and not something that really... See, I don't care what I like when it comes to food. I don't care what I prefer. I don't care what I like. None of these matter to me at all. What matters to me is, what am I eating? What direction is it going to stimulate me in? And then when I don't eat, it's all very simple. But I can tell you, when I don't eat, it's because I'm not around people.
I wonder as well, there's something else that's occurred to me as I was just listening to you talking then about eating and what you're eating and what direction it's going to take you and so on. I've had experience of friends of mine who have had eating disorders, and that seems to me like just generally mental illness as a whole. It does seem that your institution might be a bit of a magnet for that, for people who firstly might have just significant mental illnesses, and then secondly, specifically eating disorders. Have you you must encounter that, and how do you deal with it?
Yeah, for one, I deal with it with a lot of empathy because I was born into this world. I was never thin until I started eating. I was a robust child who never ate. So I first off would say that if I was a millennial, they would have diagnosed me with everything. I would have been anorexic. I would have been, I had ADHD, ADD, all of these so-called disorders. But because those things didn't exist in the mind of humanity, I was just allowed to be who I am. And by default, I would have definitely fallen into the category of somebody who, whatever they call it, doesn't eat. I never would make myself throw up, but I just wouldn't eat. So to me, how I approach these people is on a very individual level, and I validate them. No, I don't validate the disorder. I validate the position they were coming from that caused the disorder, because to me, if anything's out of order, it's the society that we agree on. That's what's out of order. It's cruel, it's crude, it's very unscientific, it's very human chauvinist, and it's all of these things that, and plus the big thing to me about our society is it's so non-scientific, but it just claims to be right, but it never wants to look at itself for the problem. I consider if you're well in this world, I would consider that to be a bigger problem than being sick in a sick world. If you're well in a sick world and you're doing good in this world, it's probably not a good sign for you. That's how I approach it.
But Brandon, you can't be that old. I mean, there was such a thing as anorexia. There was such a thing as anorexia when you were younger, surely. And if you had have been...
Yeah, I think not the AD things, though, the ADD and ADHD. There wasn't Ritalin, all that kind of stuff.
But if people are coming to you and they're anorexic, then surely, and like you said, you're not validating... I mean, have you not told any of them to get help and eat?
No, well, what I do, I certainly have. What I always encourage people to do is to find... First off, I let them know, look, if your body's telling you this, I'm sure that it's right. But then from there, I begin to discuss to them, well, what is a food? If you don't want any of these poisons, and you consider them to be poisons, because that's what essentially anorexic people that I've met, they feel that all this food is a poison. And I just assure them, not everything is a poison. They've got to find a way to eat foods that are in harmony with their systems. And essentially, I just let them know that those foods are out there. I can teach people how to find them. And it's a different approach to food. So I do always tell people who don't eat, hey, your health is the most important thing. Staying in your body is the most important thing. You don't want to be 70 years old and your body, and you've been fasting your whole life, because your body's going to be ready to just give out on you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, do you know, I mean, wow. I like I say, fascinating conversation. And before I let you go, I just want to ask you one final thing, which is, and I've deliberately avoided the subject because I don't know about you, but I'm absolutely sick of talking about COVID-19 and coronavirus and all that stuff. But I'm just going to chuck it in at the end. I mean, I wonder how has that affected you, your philosophy? I mean, it's an epoch-changing event, isn't it? It's something massive that's happened, and I wonder how that's affected you.
Right. Well, Wiley taught me how to handle every situation as a gift from the Creator, if you will, a gift from above. So I've considered this whole COVID thing to be a huge benefit for humanity. It's one of the things that I've noticed is that, so I lived through a huge hurricane when I was a child. It was a very large hurricane. It came right over my house. And I noticed that after the tragedy of the hurricane, everybody came together. And then I lived through 9/11, the whole towers thing here. And I noticed for a few days after 9/11, everybody was like superhuman with each other. And then the war on terror began and everything got screwed up. But for those few days after 9/11, everybody was so human. And so I consider this whole COVID thing to be more of an opportunity for humanity to just come together. Here in this land, the United States has basically shut everybody's business down, and they're not giving anybody money. They've had one stimulus check over here sent to everybody, $1,200 in 9 months. And so they're really tanking everything and stuff. But what I'm seeing is that it's an opportunity for the humans to really step up and create solutions. So that's really what I'm doing. And ironically, talk about food. Well, that's one of my main projects that I worked with people on. I'm working to solve our food issues, our food supply issues in this land. That's one of my passions, is to grow foods that are in the higher dimensional energies already. You see, I never wanted to eat McDonald's and stuff, I always wanted to grow foods. I'm a farmer, So I consider this COVID thing to be a great opportunity for us. And if there's one thing I've learned about the assholes in life, it's better to just ignore them to death. They'll destroy themselves, So in a way, like, I know about all this stuff about, who created it and what are these guys trying to do and all this kind of stuff. And I really just see this as a big opportunity for us to step up and create solutions.
Brandon Day, a student of Wiley Brooks from the Breatharian Institute. How do people find you online? I've enjoyed chatting to you. I think people might enjoy looking into your work. How do we find you online and how do we get you?
Yeah, thank you so much. So I can be found on the website breatharian.com. That's BREATHARIAN.com. Also, we're on Instagram at Breatharian Institute. And that's pretty much where to find us right now.
Brandon, that's great. I'm going to put some links across from the show notes. If you click on through the show notes, you'll find this guy. And like I say, a bit of a skeptic this end, but I was fascinated to hear what you got to